Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of How to Get Hired. My name is Matti, and I'm part of the innovation team here at the Prince's Trust, and I'm so glad to have all of you here today. The Prince's Trust is here to support young people aged 11 to 30 to connect with confidence, courses, and careers. If this is your first time joining us, then welcome. It's so great to have you here. Today's session is called How to Get Hired, and it's a brand new bite-sized series designed to give young people like you the essential tips and insider info that's going to give you the edge on the competition when you're hunting for work. In our last episode, we looked at uncovering our strengths. No worries if you didn't catch it. All these episodes will be available to watch back on our Get Hired YouTube page. Today, however, we're going to take it a step further, giving you the top techniques to help you ace your next interview. So, whether you're watching us live on Facebook or YouTube, remember to log in and join the conversation. We want to hear from you and put as many of your burning questions about getting a job to our panel. Speaking of our fantastic panel, I think I should introduce them straight away. So joining us again, we have the marvellous Charlie Welch and also Vela Francoise. So Charlie, I'd love to turn over to you and give a quick little hello and introduction to yourself.
Thank you very much indeed, Matti. Hi there, everybody. So my name's Charlie. I don't know if you saw the last webinar. If you haven't, check it out. But something I said then was that I used to be in the army. My little bit of information today is that for my well-being at the moment, I am very badly playing the guitar. And I was wondering if you might want to put in the chat what you're doing for your well-being right now. But just about me, I've been working with young people in various different settings, whether that's in the army, in academia, or with the Prince's Trust, helping young unemployed people into work for the last 30 years. So hopefully I can give you some top tips today.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Definitely someone whose brains we want to be picking. And also we have the wonderful Vela. Vela, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you go ahead and give a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Vela. I am in my 20s, so a young person still. And I currently volunteer with the Prince's Trust. And yeah, I'm here to give my tips and advice and just general help, essentially, to help all you young people out there essentially get a job. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vela. Vela is a volunteer. She works with me on my team and she is an absolute superstar. And so I'm so glad that she can be here joining us today. So thank you to both of you. Now, we're going to get straight into it. My first question is actually going to go to all of the audience that are watching at home. I want to hear from you. What are some of the challenges that you faced when going for interviews? What are some of the challenges that you faced when you've been in that interview situation? You find that maybe you're one of those people that tends to go off on a tangent. I know that I am. I am definitely a waffler. Have we got any other wafflers on the call with us today? Yeah, absolutely. So maybe that's one of your troubles. You're always going off on a tangent. Or perhaps maybe you often feel nervous. Being in an interview is a really nerve-wracking situation and you need a bit of help with finding your confidence. Or maybe you find it challenging to come up with enough to say and really bulk out your answers and give an employer all the meaty bits that they want to hear about. So pop all of that into the comments because I would love to hear from you, and we'll put all of that to our panel and just see what's going on with all of you at home. This is a very welcoming space and our lovely panel are going to help break down some of the barriers for us. So while you're all busy typing away, I'm going to put the same question to you, Vela, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your own experience. Can you tell us about some of the challenges that you faced when you've been going for interviews recently?
Yeah, sure. So some of the challenges I've definitely faced, and there's been a few, but one of the main challenges I've probably faced is with having confidence in my strengths. I think a lot of people struggle with having confidence, but I think not really knowing your strengths and knowing how to sell your strengths can definitely be a detergent. And I think it doesn't present you in the best light, and that's definitely something I've struggled with going into interviews. For example, in a recent interview I went on, I had very little experience in the role I was applying for and being interviewed for, and I allowed that to play on my mind and as a result, I didn't get to sell myself and present myself in the best light. I essentially lacked the confidence that I needed to sell my strengths. And yeah, so that would be one of them. And I think another would be another challenge essentially I faced in interviews is with competency-based questions. Not being confident enough in the competency-based questions that they're going to ask me. It's usually unpredictable anyway, and you obviously you're never going to know what your interview is going to ask you, but not feeling adequately prepared enough to give an adequate answer to my interviewer. So I think those are some of the challenges that I faced.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing so openly about all of that, Vela. And one thing I want to just bring up, because you mentioned a really, really important thing, which is around competency-based questions. And many of you might have heard of this or watching at home. Charlie, can you just help us break that down? What is a I can't even say it. What is a competency-based question? Like, what is that? And why do employers use those?
Yeah, sure, Matti. So competence is basically being good at stuff, and they want to hear some evidence of you being good at the skills and strengths that they are specifically looking for. So competency-based questions are those that say, can you give me an example of a time when you did something or other, you demonstrated? It might be leadership or teamwork, or it's that sort of tell me about a time when question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And those come up quite a lot. And we do get, it's one of the things that I think we all struggle with sometimes, is really being able to pull those examples out of the air. Now, I'm just going to quickly turn to the comments and just see what we've got coming in. And I think there's a lot of shared things here that we can really highlight. So we've got one comment here saying around getting nervous and saying too little in response to questions. So how do you really bulk out those answers? Yeah, that's a really, really common thing to happen, but we're going to break all of that down, don't worry. And we've also got getting the question halfway through your answer. So some of us might be really well prepared, but when you get under that pressure in the interview room, you might forget halfway through. And no matter how much preparation you do, we've got some good techniques to help you remember and really, really pace yourself through the interview. Another one, and this is a common around, is around feeling anxious, around having low self-esteem. I see a few of you have said, and Felicia here has said, I agree, Vela. It's unable to sell your strength to the employer and really, really articulate yourself. So it seems like there are quite a lot of different things going on, and that can be quite overwhelming. So Charlie, I wonder if we can turn to you, and maybe you can start to think about how can we break down these challenges? Can you give any advice around where do you start with all of this?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think the first thing is, if you got as far as interview, then congratulations, well done. Because the good news is it means that your CV works, the covering letter that you sent works, maybe the chat that you had somebody. I had a young person last week who got the job because they wrote to the chief exec of the small company that they really, really wanted to work for. So whatever tactics you've used to get to this point, to get to that interview, well done. So feel confident that you've got that far and that they like what you've got to offer. You've certainly got something to offer. Now, in terms of how do you break down the challenges, we do it quite systematically. So I'll give you a little process that you can follow. And for us, it starts with looking at the job description. All right, so first thing, and you might want to write this down if you're taking some notes. What does the job description, first of all, what does the job description say about the company? What does it say about the organization or the not-for-profit or whoever it is that you're applying to? And it might be a volunteering role, it might be a full-time role, but all of the evidence that you need about the organization may be in there, but it might not. So the first thing you do is you write down everything that it tells you about the organization. And then step two is to think about, what are they not telling me? What do I need to go and find out for myself? And if I just give you a little example, there was an amazing young person who came on one of our workshops, Emma, and she contacted me after one of our workshops to say, I got the job. And it was actually a work experience summer placement that she got, quite high profile. And I said to her, so go on then, what made the difference? What was it? And she said, well, I followed that process and the job description told me all sorts of things about the organization, but it didn't tell me about what their values were. So I went off and did my homework on their values. And she said, the last question at interview was, excuse me, a competency-based question. Can you tell me an example of when you have lived one of our values? And she said, I had prepared that. I had done that preparation. And she said, they told me I was the only person who had done that. So there you go. That's as far as I'm going to take you now. But there are lots of other things that you can prepare.
That's really, really wonderful. Charlie, on that, you said there are certain things around preparation. Are there any kind of top tips that you would give? So you talked about breaking down the job description. Are there any other top tips that people really need to think about even before they get into the interview situation?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the key thing here, step 3, if you like, the next part is you're looking at the job description and you're looking at what are the skills and strengths and experience that they are looking for. And you go through the job description either on your, on your machine, or if you're doing it on paper with a highlighter, and you highlight each of those things that they're looking for, because those are the questions that they are most likely to ask. Because I think one of the common problems, and people are saying, don't know what they're going to ask me. Well, you can bet that they are most likely going to ask you things because they're looking for the evidence and they're looking for the stories and how you can really bring those stories to light. And I think Matti's got a really good exercise for us to be able to do that, haven't you, Matti?
I absolutely have. And that's leading me on very nicely to talk about one of the top techniques that can really help you to give interview answers that have the maximum impact on the employer. And it's called the STAR technique. Now, some of you may have already heard of this. You might have used it a little bit in school, and for others, it might be brand new. Now, either way, the STAR technique is going to help all of you to craft some memorable interview stories that an employer can really easily follow along with. So I talked about being a waffler, and one of the disadvantages of saying too much is that an employer can get lost trying to figure out what you're trying to say. So we can use the STAR technique to be really prepared, really concise and focused on the answers that we're trying to give. So why is it called STAR? It stands for situation, task, action, and result. If you can remember those 4 words, it will really help with preparing your answers. And now let's take a look at how we can use these 4 words in sentences to start crafting our stories. All of us have amazing stories to tell that give evidence. So when an employer asks you for a competency-based question, give me an example, you've got it all prepared using the STAR technique. So on your screens, you should be able to see a little breakdown here. So we've got situation, task, action, and result. By using those 4 key words, you've immediately got a 4-step process to craft your answer. The situation was, what were you doing? Were you at school? Was this in a past job that you've had? Or maybe it's from a personal example in your real life, maybe how you've looked after a friend or a family member. Task, I was tasked with what? What was the problem that you were trying to solve? If you can make it really clear what the problem was to the employer, they will understand how you could solve problems for them in their organization. Action. What was the action that you took? How did you go about solving the problems? What were all the things that you did in order to fix that task? And result. The result of all of your work mounted up to what? What was the end result of all of that hard work that you put in? So those 4-step processes mean that you can really easily craft a story, and it's absolutely fine to use these sentences as prompts. So let's have a go now, and imagine that the employer has asked you about a time when you've been a team player. Can you use the STAR technique to write down a story of when you have been a really good team player? So on a pen and paper, or using a word processor on your computer, you can use these sentences to start writing a story. And imagine that the employer has asked you, give me an example when you have really supported a team or been an amazing team player. I can give you a little bit of an example. So when I'm in an interview situation, and if somebody asks me a competency-based question, my mind starts flicking a little bit like a Rolodex, and I've got to think, right, what's my story I'm going to pull out? And so for teamwork, I could talk around when I used to do a lot of work in theatre. So I could say the situation was I was running a theatre club for older people. I was tasked with building their confidence and encouraging them to take part in creating some new plays. So the action I took was to really listen to them and find out what they were passionate about so that I could tailor the project to be relevant to them. And the result is that it was really engaging for all of the older people that took part. Many of them told their friends, and we actually doubled the number of people involved in the project. So it's really easy to see how you can craft a story and break it down into 4 easy chunks. Now, I've talked a lot, and I hope that some of you are typing away at home, because I would love for you to share some of your star stories on teamwork in the comments. And while you're doing that, I'm going to turn to our panel, who are going to share some of their real life examples of teamwork to help illustrate this a little bit further. I'll leave it up on the screen for you as well, so that you can see and keep referring back to it while you're crafting your story, and share it in the comments with us. But Vela, would I be able to turn to you first? And would you be happy to share your star story? Have you got an example of when you have really been a team player?
Yeah, sure. So an example situation where I've demonstrated being a team player would be on a lead generation project working at the Prince's Trust. So the task that I was tasked to do was creating a social media content plan that would ultimately drive engagement to the organization. The action I took for the team was to schedule a brainstorming session where everyone in a group could share their ideas and listen to one another's ideas on content essentially. The result of this meant that we were able to create a successful social media content plan that drove engagement and increased engagement by 30%.
Fabulous. Thank you, Vela. And that is a really, really nice, concise story. And you've got some really good data and stats in there as well. But Charlie, I'd love to turn to you. What did you like about Vela's story? It'd be great to hear from the expert on what you thought.
Well, I think you're spot on, Matt. You hit the nail on the head. Vela, what you did absolutely beautifully there was you followed that structure through. So we had the background, we understood what the situation was really clear about what the task was, what the need was. The action you took was very clear. And then I love the fact that you increased the reach by 30%, was it? Which is fantastic. I think the other thing that Matti mentioned that was key is you did it in a concise way, because you prepared it. Instead of waffling, you actually just cut it straight down to, these are the facts, this is what I did, it's a lovely story, I've now got a little picture in my head. Okay, Vela, social media, right, she's all over that, she can do this, you've given me the evidence that I needed, that you're competent around running a social media campaign and building that reach. So fantastic.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charlie. I just want to quickly turn to the comments, because I've got someone watching on YouTube, Amina, who has posted a star story in the comments. I was tasked with supporting a team investigating an outbreak in a care home. So this is a really, really topical one at the moment. And I really, immediately from that situation, we know that this is a high pressure situation that someone had to deal with. And we can see that they supported their team and made sure all the repeat tests gave the same results as other members in the team. So quite data heavy, really, really giving the example of how they took part. Because one of the pitfalls can be we all want to involve the team. We all want to say, we did this, but actually the interviewer wants to know, what did you do? That's brilliant. And then finally, this resulted in all of us getting the suspected care home residents correct, and we really impressed the external lecturers and scientists. I love that. So it's bringing in what was the positive praise that you got, and you can absolutely bring that into the interview. People want to know, like, if you did a good job and people commented on that, absolutely, really, really share that. Charlie, have you got any further thoughts to add to that story?
Well, I think Amina's just reminded me of a fantastic story I heard last week. I'd been helping a young person prepare for their interview. And one of the things that they were looking for, one of the key skills was organisation. And this young person had told a star story about how they organised a holiday for 21 friends. And they had a spreadsheet which was colour coded. And the result was they went and they had a fantastic holiday, and everybody knew at every phase in the process exactly what was going to happen, and they had everything that they needed, and it resulted in a fantastic holiday. She wasn't due to start the job because it was a graduate program until July. They were so impressed. They realized from that fantastic star story and all the others that I'm sure she told that they needed her skills here and now, and she actually started on Wednesday. So just don't be scared about telling people the good stuff that you naturally do. That's your native genius. And if you haven't watched webinar 1, go back and watch webinar 1 about native genius, because that's star stories are so easy to tell when you're talking about things that are authentically you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Charlie. It would only be fair if now that we turn to you, Charlie, to give us an example of a star story, and then we'll turn to Vela to find out what she liked about the star story. Would you be happy to share that with us?
Yes, of course, Matti, of course. And I really loved your analogy with the Rolodex. You know, I don't know if you guys know what a Rolodex is, the little paper system that you sort of went round on a roll and you could just pick out the address or the thing that you needed, very pre-digital. Anyway, I went to my Rolodex and I thought, oh, I could tell them the chocolate factory story, which part-time when I was a student. And then I thought, no, I'm going to go to my volunteering story, because I don't know about how many of you have taken the opportunity to volunteer during COVID or volunteer whilst you're looking for other work. But I think it's one of the best sources of star stories and evidence if you're in that situation, if you haven't got a job that you can possibly get. So the volunteering that I did is I went on an expedition to South America. And I know that sounds expensive, but part of the process of volunteering for Rally, volunteering for a lot of these organizations, is to do some fundraising. And that in itself demonstrates to the employers that you have skills you have interpersonal skills, you've got your social media skills, whatever things that you have around fundraising, that's a start. But my star story starts here. So I was on an expedition in South America with 15 young people, and I was their project manager. And we had been tasked with building a school in the sort of at the back of the Amazonian rainforest. And the action that I took right at the beginning was to gather everyone together and say, okay, so what is it important? What's important for you in this 4 months that we're going to spend together? And they gradually shared why they had put all the effort into their fundraising, what was important for them. And for some of them, it was about coming to meet people of different cultures. For some, it was about sustainability and seeing the impact of logging in the rainforest. For some of them, they were just really brutally honest. They wanted to get away from working long shifts and do something a bit different. And I was able to then, once they'd heard that from one another, they were able to offer one another help. They knew that if somebody wasn't there to climb the mountains, they could help carry their rucksack. And for example, when we were with the people in the community, we understood that not everybody wanted to do the hokey cokey. The result was we had 2 guys who came down with tropical foot rot, and we had to carry them on stretchers for more than 2 days with our own rucksacks. We never fell out once. And I think that very conversation we had right at the beginning, us all collaborating together and me leading that collaborative inquiry, was what made the difference.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And wow, what an incredible story of teamwork. And it's such an unconventional story as well, because when we think about a job interview, we think about very typical kind of stories that we can tell. But Vela, really interested to hear what you thought of Charlie's story. What did you pull out? And if you were an interviewer, you know, what would be some of the things you'd be thinking from the story that she's just told you?
Yeah, so it's a really incredible story. It sounds like an amazing experience that you had. I think the way you wrapped it up at the end, I think is essentially what the interviewer will be looking for. The fact that you led that group discussion and you encouraged everybody to collaborate together, and those are probably the two skills that you picked up. You led that group, and that you encouraged collaboration within the group. I think those are the two skills, obviously, that the interviewer will be looking for.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Vela. Really, really useful. Now, Charlie, I just want to pick up on something that you said a minute ago around like authenticity and about bringing your authentic self to the interview and to your stories. Can you just say a little bit about that? What do you mean by that?
So I can give you an example from just this week. Lovely fellow called Charlie Brown, not the cartoon character. He's actually enormous and he's got bright red hair. But Charlie was struggling to get through the interview system. He got to interview, but he was just not making it into securing the job. And so we had a bit of a chat, and I said to him, so what things are you talking about at interview? He said, oh, well, you know, I'm talking about all the skills and strengths. And what he was actually being was very generic. He was talking about what he thought all employers wanted. Instead of talking about the key skills that his native genius, what he had to offer this organization. And when he was little, a star story that he told was about, I got him to think of it a little bit more authentically. I said, okay, so tell me, I actually know him quite well. And so I said, Charlie, I've known you a while. What are you really bringing to an employer? What are you great at? And he then started to say, okay, well, I am really good with people. I do know that. And I said, well, you know, give me an example of that time. And he gave me a far more authentic example. But the best one that he told, because it was about a sustainability company, and he was talking about how passionate he was about the environment. And I said, okay, connect us to your passion with the environment. What, I know why you're passionate. I can see it. He said, oh, well, that would be my surfing. That would be the fact that when I was little, I saw this plastic bottle on the beach, and I realized that there was just, you know, that there was pollution in the oceans, and I joined Surfers Against Sewage, and suddenly he came to life. He was him being authentic. And he told that story in an interview, and he started work. He had the interview on the Friday. He started work so it was week before last, started work on the Wednesday last week for an organization called PaveGen. They transfer energy into footprints, into footfall on paving stones in London. And he told that surfing story and his passion for the environment. So I am all over. You really get in tune with your native genius, and then your star stories will be incredibly authentic.
Thank you so much, Charlie. All about bringing your authentic self and not just saying what you think the interviewer wants to hear. They want to see you, which leads us on very nicely for me to bring in a quick video from winner of The Apprentice, Mark Wright, all around bringing your authentic self to the interview process. Let's take a look.
I employ many tens of people every single year. I sit in hundreds, if not thousands of interviews, and I've quickly learned what makes someone eligible to be hired and someone I just don't want in my business. The main thing I look for is someone entrepreneurial, someone that comes in here, maintains their personality, is true to themselves, and is really passionate about what they can do for themselves within my business. The ones that fail come in and tell me what I want to hear. Their CV says the same as everyone else. Oh, I think outside the box. I think inside the box. I don't care about the box. I care about you. I want you to be you and the best version of yourself. What do you want to do in my business to expand your life and your career? Who's it going to help by working for me? Those are really important things. If you speak to a potential employer with passion and honesty, you'll get the job.
Marvellous and passionate words there from Mark Wright. Wonderful to see that and just get that from the top as well. It's about hearing that, bringing your authentic self to that interview room. Fantastic. So I want to dive back to STAR very briefly. I've got a comment here from our very own Dagmar, who's wonderful. We've got, how can we make sure using the STAR techniques sound natural in interviews? Does it just come down to practice? And Charlie, I suppose I would throw this one your way. Once you have a STAR story, have you got any tips for how we can really make it sound better, more natural?
Yeah, I really do, Matti, and this is crucial, in fact. So you might have done all your preparation, you've got all these wonderful STAR stories, but they're still on paper. That doesn't count. You may or may not remember them at interview. And if I go back to, I think it was Amina's comment early on, I get a bit nervous and then I've forgotten it. So what happens is when you're in an interview, it's just like going on a date, jumping out of an aeroplane, maybe doing some DJing or performing at a new venue for the first time. You get the same physical symptoms, don't you? In fact, just tell me in the chat, what are the physical symptoms that you experience, and on any of those, and how similar are they to the symptoms that you experience when you're going for interview? And it's because it's important, and there is a lot at stake. So there are two final parts really in the STAR technique. The first one is rehearsal. It's a second R about rehearsal, and there's also one about reflection, which we'll go into in a minute. But you can rehearse in all sorts of different ways. So it comes from being on the paper to being, yes, I can deliver it in a structured fashion. And maybe you're just recording yourself on your phone, or maybe you're doing it with a friend or a member of your family on Zoom, a member of your family in the house, or somebody on Zoom. But you're practicing it until it sounds natural. And then when they say, have you got a story about this? You go, yeah, here's my Rolodex. I can just chat about that story naturally. So it's at this stage, it's about rehearsal. But Matti, you might want to talk about the reflection, I think.
Absolutely. So when we were talking around the STAR technique, we have situation, task, action, and result. And if you've really nailed that and you've got a compelling story, you can take it one step further and add an extra R on the end for reflection. So what do we mean by that? And I'd love to turn back to you, Charlie, if I may.
Yeah.
You had a fantastic, really powerful story there. How would you reflect on that in an interview? So you've done the results and you said we all banded together and we got through that expedition. What's the reflection piece? What would you have done differently if you were to do it again? And how can that be really powerful when you're selling that to an employer?
So I think the reflecting piece would be, and what I've learned since then is that opening conversation that you have with somebody at the start of a project is really important, because it helps one another understand what's driving you, what's important about this project, and you can establish how you're going to work together effectively. So that would be my reflection from that experience.
Fantastic. And Vela, how about you? What would be your reflection on your STAR story?
With my STAR story, because we worked collaboratively, we brainstormed and listened to one another's ideas in brainstorming for content ideas. I think one of my reflections would be to encourage the more quieter team members in my team to speak up a bit more. And I think that would be my reflection.
Absolutely. And I think when we're talking around teamwork, it's showing really how, even though everyone's pulling together as a team, you still need people driving that force within. So Vela having a reflection around getting people to contribute more, like how can we make them feel more at ease and really get their ideas into the throw? That's a really great example to see how Vela's a fantastic team player. So that's a great reflection. I really love that. Thank you both for sharing all of that. Charlie, was there anything additional you wanted to jump in to talk around general preparation that might be helpful in terms of interview techniques?
I think the only other thing to say is that some of your experiences, what you can use for different competency questions. And if you're going to get really thorough and really detailed, and that's the space you like to work in, then you can even make a spreadsheet of all your best experiences and which is the best example for which skill. And then almost at the end of the interview, if they haven't given you the opportunity to talk about something that's really brilliant, and they say, you know, and have you got anything else? You can go back to your list of what they were looking for and say, you know, in your step 3, I also noticed that you were looking for this. And so I've just, you know, I've got a little example if you'd like to hear it. They're never going to say no. Let's have some more evidence. There you go. You've got another fantastic story in.
Love that. That's great. Thank you so much, Charlie. And I would love to hear from our audience as well. So if there are any questions that you would like to fire to Charlie or to Vela around interviews or around the job search in general, then we will have a couple of minutes to come to that shortly. While you're thinking of any questions you might have, Vela, I would love to turn to you and hear a little bit about your experience with the Prince's Trust. Maybe you could tell everyone about what programs you've been on and talk a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, sure. So some of the programs I've taken part in myself are Future Leaders and How to Hack. So How to Hack to Get a Job being the most recent one. And it's a great event. I can only recommend it ever so more because I've experienced it myself. And I think the best part of it is being able to have a one-to-one interview with a professional who can give you feedback, who can give you tips and advice on how to improve and better your interview, your interview practice, essentially. And it just, I think it's a way to just boost your confidence. For me personally, it was a great confidence booster, and it allowed me to just have that personal reassurance of the strengths that I have and the qualities that I can bring to a company. So yeah, I would recommend it for sure.
Fantastic. No, really, really great to hear you had a fantastic experience on it. So if any of you at home, like Vela, are keen to hone your skills with some amazing free support, and if you've enjoyed today's session, taking a deep dive into the STAR technique, then I highly recommend that you join our fantastic How to Hack an Interview and Get a Job program, which is coming up on Wednesday, the 10th of February. There is a link being posted into the comments as we speak. It is absolutely free to register. It's a one-day program led by industry experts from top companies, including Barclays, NatWest, Brand Learning, and Money Supermarket. It's all delivered virtually, and you'll be coached on how to hone your interview skills to really get the edge on the competition. We know that it's a really tough landscape out there at the moment, so the more preparation that you have, the more you keep developing your skills, the better stead it's going to put you in when those job opportunities come up and you go for them. And if that wasn't enough with How to Hack, you also get that one-to-one coaching session from your industry expert, where they will give you that crucial feedback that is often missing when we go for an interview. How often does it happen where if you don't get the job, you just don't get the feedback, or it's usually around, oh, you could have had more experience, and that doesn't help too many of you. And we really want to give you that feedback to help make you as confident as possible when you go into an interview situation. So click the link in the comments to get signed up now, and one of our team will give you a call in the next couple of days. Thank you again to all of you for joining and to our fantastic panelists. So please give them loads of kudos in the chat. It's been so enlightening having all of you join us today. That's the end for today's session, but do give us a follow or a subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on to stay up to date with all the support that we have to offer. It really, really could be your turning point. Today's session is made possible thanks to the GMCA, so thank you for their support in Greater Manchester, and to all of you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thank you ever so much, and speak soon.